What is up, Pitt fans? Thank you so much for tuning in to Inside the Panthers on YouTube. My name is Steven Thompson, joined as always by our good friend Jack Markowski. I'm here from the Petersen Events Center where the Pitt Panthers just knocked off Notre Dame by a final score of 70-60. They've now won 4 or 5 in ACC play. They're racing up the ACC standings, and they have reestablished a home court advantage. They've gotten a bunch of their confidence back. It seems like they're playing their best basketball at the right time. You know, this calendar turns to February. You see all around the country. It was a huge day in college basketball, been a huge week in college basketball, but the level of competition is heating up. The intensity is heating up, and people are already thinking about March. This is kind of the home stretch right here. The good news is for Pitt is that they're playing their best possible basketball at the exact right time, I would say. But Jack, you see 4 out of 5 wins in ACC play, most of them pretty convincing. And what do you make of this team? You know, like they are in, I believe, tie for 9th in the ACC standings right now. That puts them in position to maybe earn a first-round bye in the ACC tournament. What do you feel like this team's ceiling is, and just how far up those ACC standings do you think they can still climb?
I think there's a chance for them to climb relatively high. You know, they moved themselves out of the basement. Now they're in the middle with, you know, teams like Syracuse, Virginia Tech, Miami, Wake Forest, and they still have games against a lot of the teams that are in that same discussion or even above them. With the way that they're playing, you know, I think there's reason to have confidence that they can continue to climb. They have opportunities. They have some momentum going. And just the, you know, the fact that they're sort of playing themselves out of having to play on Tuesday in the ACC tournament, getting a one-round bye, that can make all the difference in the world. So, you know, as long as they keep it going, as long as they take care of business against teams that they match up with well, then I don't see any reason why they can't continue to, you know, make some noise moving forward.
Yeah, I 100% agree, because this is also just such a crowded middle of the pack in the ACC. 1 win, 2 wins, 3 wins. You know, even a tiny winning streak can really rocket you up the standings. Like you said, there's also a ton of opportunities against the teams that are directly ahead of them. I mean, they travel to NC State this week. They get you know, a pretty well-timed rest. You know, they'll get they don't play, I believe, next Saturday. I think it's just NC State next week. Let me double-check the calendar. Yeah, it's just NC State next week. Then they go to Virginia the week after, and then get Louisville back at home. So it's only 3 games over the next 2 weeks. It's a pretty opportune time for the Panthers to kind of capitalize on this momentum. And I don't think it's unheard of, you know, or completely impossible for them to possibly think about climbing into that 5th seed like they were last year, if they keep playing the way that they do. And for all those reasons that you and I both laid out about, you know, the crowded, you know, middle of the pack in the ACC. You look at the teams ahead, you know, in that kind of top, you know, call it a third, those teams that could find themselves getting a double bye, possibly like the Panthers did a couple years ago. I mean, Florida State is playing really well in the ACC, but, you know, they had a rough non-conference schedule, which is kind of the real Florida State. Virginia has shown some signs of cracking. Like, they're not a sure bet either. This is a really, really crowded middle of the pack, and they'll get another shot at NC State. And it seems like Duke and Carolina have really pulled the head of the pack, but the Panthers will have plenty of opportunities to keep climbing, and I don't think it's completely out of the question that they will get up to, that they could get up to that double bye territory. And I think, you know, I'd be pretty confident in saying that they're not going to play on Tuesday during that second week of March in the ACC tournament in Washington, D.C. I feel like you have to feel really good about what this team's doing. You know, they can win on the road. That's the other thing. Like, they have one of the better road records in ACC play in this league, and they're kind of reestablishing the home court advantage. They're learning to win at home after a pretty rocky start against high major competition. So I agree with you. I think there's going to be plenty of opportunities to climb the standings. And given this way his team is playing right now, it's hard to imagine them not continuing to move up further. You know, with that said, you know, we'll get to the game itself. The Panthers beat Notre Dame 70-60. This is a really good defensive Notre Dame team, but Pitt, you know, after a really sluggish first half, they only put up 28 points in the first half. They score 42 in the second. The shots just really started to fall. I felt like their offensive process was good for most of the game, but Jack, does a game like this where, you know, I felt like they moved the ball really well. I don't know how you feel about that, but just do you have any more confidence in the offense than you did maybe before this game or even before the Wake Forest game or before the Miami game, Georgia Tech and Duke? Like, where do you stand with the offense right now? Because, despite how well I think they played, they still had a couple really long scoring droughts. Are those scoring droughts still concerning you, or do you feel like the Panthers have kind of figured out some things offensively?
I think the offense can be very good, but like you sort of alluded to, I think it's just a matter of consistency. Especially when you're leaning on the 3-point shot so much with a guy like Blake Hinson, who's had his ups and downs. I know he's great from behind the arc, but still with Carrington, who's a freshman, he's had consistency issues. But when it's all clicking, when those guys are making their shots, there's more off the ball movement. There's more conviction, action, maybe not so much ISO ball or freestyling, if you will. And 12 assists that's on par with where they've been, even above it. So, I think the offense has a lot of potential. They did begin 0 of 9 from behind the arc, but it shows that they can just flip a switch and really get it going against tough defensive teams like Notre Dame is. I mean, that's one of the best defensive teams in the conference. So, it is an issue that they don't really have anybody that can attack the rim. I guess you could consider Leggett, but there's been some issues with that too. So they rely on jump shots and 3-pointers. Like I said, there's going to be some cold spells, but I think you have to feel very good about the way that they've performed against Wake Forest, Notre Dame, and even Miami in the second half. That's sort of, what they're building, the goodwill that they're building on that side of the ball and the ways in which they can continue to build on that, in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you mentioned that 0 of 9 start from 3-point range. I mean, it was a brutal first half. I mean, we were looking at like a football score by the end of the first half. And, through that, though, I thought they got good looks, and Jeff Capel agreed, but I thought they made some nice passes. They were open shots that just didn't go down. And like you said, that's kind of shooting variance. That just happens when you're a team that relies so heavily on jump shot. But I liked the process, and you made a good point about there's less ISO ball, less kind of hero ball. Guys, I thought, moved the ball really well, and even though it didn't lead to, I think, as many assists as it could have, just because they didn't make as many shots, I loved the extra passing. I loved the extra passing to get to a drive, and then the kickouts off of that. I really like the way they distributed and shared the ball. I have a lot more confidence in this offense right now than I did, especially last month or even going into this game, just because, I think they're more diverse this time around. I think guys know their roles a lot better. And I think Blake Hinson, is learning how to – I think everyone's kind of learning how to deal with how teams are defending them. And that's part of kind of everyone finding their role. But, Blake Hinson figuring out how to defeat double teams and neutralize them so that Notre Dame can't continue to throw extra bodies at him so he can get open looks. But also when he does defeat those double teams, he's making open shots for guys like Ish Leggett, for Zach Austin, for Bub Carrington, and Jalen Lowe. I think you hit on something good, or an important point about them not having a ton of threats to drive to the rim. Leggett, I think, can do it at times. Lowe can do it at times as well. But I think the more that they kind of evolve, the more that they figure out how to defeat certain opponent game plans, that stuff will open up. So, teams will have to choose between, okay, do we live with them maybe taking a bunch of threes? Do we try to neutralize their jump shots? How do we go about it? I feel like the Panthers are developing more versatile ways to attack certain defenses. And yeah, I definitely feel like I have, a bigger, some more confidence in what this offense is capable of doing at this point in the season, especially compared to where they were for most of January. And kind of piggybacking off of that, I mean, I mentioned the 42 second half points. They scored 50 in the second half in their last game against Wake Forest, two dominant second halves in a row, 2 second halves that really powered them to victories. But I mean, you could even go back to the Miami game, the Georgia Tech game. It's been massive turnarounds in the second half that have really powered some of these good performances we've seen from Pitt as of late. What do you think these second halves say about this team? What does it say about Jeff Capel? I feel like one of the biggest criticisms of Jeff Capel throughout his tenure, good or bad, has been that he isn't really able to adjust, that he doesn't really have a counterpunch for when a team throws something at him. That doesn't really seem to be the case anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's not a coincidence that for 3-4 straight games, they've come out with more fire, more purpose, and really outplayed their opponents, even by large margins. A lot of credit has to go to Jeff Capel. My mind immediately goes to, of course, the Jeffers move. last game, and the competitive spirit and energy that brought, the defensive, edge that brought. I think in this game, it came down to prioritizing open looks, working on the perimeter, pushing the pace, getting out in transition. Their perimeter defense got better. And this isn't necessarily a second half sort of discussion, but I think Capel sticking with Federico over Diaz, Graham, and Jeffers for a majority of the game at the 5 paid off. He held his own. He had 3 blocks. So, there's more to it than that, but Capel's proven to be a coach that can adapt on the fly, sort of bring his team in, get them playing with more of an edge. And so, yeah, I think you have to give a lot of credit to Capel, his coaching staff, and, it's something that this team can really hang their hat on moving forward, is that if they fall down, they know that they can bounce back and, really make a difference by adjusting.
Yeah, and you look at games like Wake Forest, where they're down 12 in the second half, in the early sections of the second half. You look at a Miami game where they're down 19 at certain points in that second half, and you start to feel like they're almost never out of a game. That they can win kind of no matter what the deficit. They have a chance to win no matter what the deficit is. So that's certainly encouraging, and I think that encourages you not to kind of hit the panic button super early. But I think you also made a great point about what Jeff Capel's been able to do with this front court. Obviously Federico has played much better. They've kind of had a revelation with Will Jeffress being able to play the 5 a little bit. They did that today because I don't think Notre Dame was a super big or a super physical team. They were able to throw Jeffress out there and be a little smaller. Bob Carrington mentioned how that helped them switch a bunch of things on ball screens. Like they could feel comfortable switching 1 through 5 with Jeffress playing that center spot. Because they're a little smaller. They have someone who can defend on the perimeter a little bit better than Federico. Like, that's the stuff we're talking about. It's not just in-game. The in-game stuff has been good, but it's also holistically kind of pushing the right buttons to get this team what it needs. And sometimes it seems like he's just throwing things at a wall. Like, I think the Jeffers against Efton Reed thing, that seemed just kind of well, nothing else has worked, so we got to throw this guy in to see what might happen. But, you deserve credit for that nonetheless, trying something different, trying to zig when the other team is zagged, and I think you're exactly right. It's a big credit to Jeff Capel being able to make these adjustments and to take a struggling team. And like, that's the thing. It's the guys on your bench are who you have. There aren't that many buttons that you can push, but I think Jeff Capel continues to find creative ways to get the most out of this group, especially in the second half of the year. There were times when it looked like this team was vastly underperforming relative to their talent level, and now it seems like they are getting the absolute most out of everyone as everyone kind of settles into certain roles. And to kind of wrap this up, I want to talk about win number 300 at the Petersen Events Center. The Panthers secured their 300th all-time win in this building right here, a building that was that they played 21 seasons in. Jeff Capel said he had a small part to play in it, but he was the one who earned that 300th win. What to you does winning 300 games in this building mean? And just what does it mean to, I think especially as of late, kind of recapture some of that home court advantage that this building had become known for and lost for a while, and then regained it a little bit last season, lost it again for a little bit this season, but is it back? And what does winning 300 games at the Pete mean to you?
Yeah, having a place like the Pete to call home for Pitt is a huge advantage. I know you mentioned this, you wrote about it, but when the program is clicking, it's one of the best atmospheres and home courts in the nation. It has been for 20 plus years. So we've seen the impact that it had, especially last season. I know they started out a little cold at home against power conference opponents this year. The record wasn't the greatest during the mid to late 2010s, even earlier in the 2020s, but it seems like the energy and the allure of the Pete has come back. I feel like it's an intimidating place for opponents to play. The fan support has been great, of course, with the Oakland Zoo. And playing there is a real positive. Having 300 wins in that building means a lot. I think it's a testament to really what they've built over time there. And, it should be a huge asset, a huge positive for that program moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to point out this felt like one of the better crowds of the year that was at the Petersen Events Center today. Recorded attendance was 10,864. It was loud from the jump. You felt You felt the energy right away. The zoo was full. The general public really showed up, and it wasn't, like the Duke game or the North Carolina game where a bunch of visiting fans come in to help boost that number. No, this was authentic. This was Pitt fans showing up for their team on a beautiful Saturday, choosing to spend their evening inside and support this team that has given them kind of a second win, has given them another reason to believe in this team. And I think you're right that part of the allure, I think that's a good word, the mystique, the kind of magic of the Pete is back a little bit. It feels like one of those intimidating places to play again, one of those places you don't want to play. And earlier this season, I mean, it felt like this team just wasn't standing up at home. They weren't ready to defend their home floor. I mean, Clemson, Mizzou, Syracuse, like tons of teams, UNC and Duke were just walking in here and walking out with easy wins. And that's not the case anymore. This team has turned this building back into a fortress like they did last year when they ran up a 14-3 record at home. It's important. It's critical. And like I said, this team has shown they can win on the road. That's how they kind of got back to who they were. That's where they regained some of their mojo, and now they're exercising that mojo, I feel like, on the floor of the Petersen Events Center. They're making this building where they still have, I believe, 4 more home games over their last 9 contests of the year. So it's going to be a critical place for them to win some games. So it's good to have the Pete back. It's good to have the energy in this building back. It feels like a true vintage college basketball environment again, and it's a real feather in the cap. It's a recruiting pitch. It's a home court advantage. It's just a point of pride, I think, for the entire university and for this program, especially to have a place like this be one of the premier atmospheres in college basketball again. But with that, we're going to head out of here. The Panthers are winners, like I said, again, over Notre Dame, 70-60. They will get NC State on Wednesday before taking about a week off, about 6 days off before traveling down to face Virginia in Charlottesville. The Panthers are hot, and we'll have all the content you need to keep up with this team and this program moving forward. So make sure you like this video, subscribe to us on YouTube. That's youtube.com/@InsideThePanthers, and follow all of our reporting at InsideThePanthers.com. Appreciate you all tuning in, and we'll see you next time.